A man makes his pregnant mistress sit in his wife's place at their vow renewal ceremony, but when the judge begins to speak, he faints at what he hears. Thad Hemingway's knuckles whitened as he gripped his smartphone, staring at the text message that would shatter his carefully constructed life. We need to talk. Today. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. 4 months ago, those demanding messages from Valerie had excited him. Now, they filled him with dread. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, Bellwood, Wyoming sprawled beneath him, a picturesque mountain town his company had helped build over the last decade. Hemingway Construction's logo adorned half the commercial buildings downtown. The new hospital wing bore his family name, the sprawling luxury lakeside development that had put Bellwood on the map as a destination for wealthy vacationers rather than just another dot on the highway. That was his vision, his legacy. Mr. Hemingway? Caroline Weber appeared in his doorway, tablet in hand. At 45, she'd served as his executive assistant for 12 years, longer than his marriage, and her efficiency was matched only by her discretion. The mayor's office called again about your donation to the summer festival, and Mrs. Hemingway wants to know if you approved the final flower arrangements for the ceremony. Thad slipped his phone into his pocket. Tell His Honor I'll have the check ready tomorrow. And whatever Eliza wants for the flowers is fine. Caroline's eyebrow arched slightly. Any particular reason you're leaving all the vow renewal decisions to your wife? It's your ceremony too. She's got better taste. Thad forced a smile. Besides, I'm swamped with the River Pines development. Those Seattle investors are flying in next week. Caroline nodded but lingered in the doorway. The entire town's talking about your ceremony. 15 years is quite an achievement. Is it? Thad murmured before catching himself. I mean, yes, of course it is. His phone vibrated again and Caroline's eyes flicked toward his pocket. Will there be anything else, Mr. Hemingway? No, thank you, Caroline. After she left, Thad pulled out his phone. Valerie, I'm outside in the parking lot. Either you come down or I come up. Your choice. Jesus Christ, Thad hissed. He grabbed his suit jacket and hurried toward the private elevator, nodding tensely at employees who greeted him along the way. The elevator doors closed, and Thad checked his reflection in the polished brass. At 42, he still turned heads, salt and pepper hair that suggested distinguished experience rather than age, a lean physique maintained by pre-dawn workouts, and the confident posture of a self-made man. Women had always been drawn to him, but he'd been faithful to Eliza for 14 years and 6 months of their 15-year marriage, until Valerie Reeves arrived in Bellwood. In the underground executive parking garage, he spotted her immediately, tall, copper hair cascading past her shoulders, those emerald eyes that had captivated him during her job interview. She leaned against her Audi, arms crossed over her chest. Even from this distance, he could see the slight curve of her belly beneath her fitted dress. Have you lost your mind? He hissed, approaching her. My entire staff could see you from the windows. That's the point, Valerie replied coolly. I'm done hiding, Thad. Lower your voice, he glanced around nervously. Let's talk in my car. Inside his Range Rover, the tension between them filled the space like smoke. 4 months ago, they'd have been all over each other. Now they sat stiffly, separated by the center console that felt like an ocean. What do you want, Val? What do I want? She laughed bitterly. What I want is not to be pregnant with a married man's baby while he parades around town planning a vow renewal ceremony with his wife. Thad pinched the bridge of his nose. We've been through this. I'll take care of you and the baby. I've already set up the trust fund. But I need time. Time for what exactly? Your wife thinks some stranger is carrying your baby through an arrangement you invented. Meanwhile, I'm showing more every day. People are noticing, Thad. What's your brilliant plan for when I can't hide it anymore? The surrogacy lie had seemed so perfect when he'd concocted it. After years of fertility struggles that had taken an emotional toll on Eliza, she'd embraced the idea of hiring a surrogate. What Eliza didn't know was that there was no surrogate, just Valerie, his 29-year-old financial administrator who'd come to Bellwood escaping a complicated situation in Chicago. The timing worked out perfectly, Valerie continued, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Your fake surrogate is due just 2 months after me. Were you planning to steal our baby and pass it off as coming from the surrogate? Is that how sick this has gotten? Of course not, Thad snapped, though the thought had briefly crossed his mind in his darkest moments of panic. I was going to tell Eliza about us after the ceremony. The surrogate story was just to explain why she's suddenly going to be a mother. After 15 years of marriage, you thought the best anniversary gift was a lie about finally having a child, followed by surprise, it's actually with my mistresses. You really are delusional. Thad's phone rang. Eliza's ringtone. He declined the call. You need to leave, he said to Valerie. I'm not going anywhere until we have a real plan. I came to this town to start over, not to be your dirty secret. And I've given you everything you asked for. The job, the apartment, the car. I didn't ask for any of that. Valerie's eyes flashed dangerously. I earned that job with my MBA and experience. I pay for my own apartment. And this car? She gestured toward her Audi. I bought it myself with my signing bonus. The only thing I asked from you was honesty from the beginning. You told me your marriage was over in all but name. The familiar guilt twisted in Thad's stomach. He had said those things, whispered them in the darkness of the mountain cabin he'd rented for their trysts. He'd meant them in those moments, convinced that his marriage to Eliza had become a comfortable partnership rather than a passion. But in the cold light of day, he couldn't imagine actually leaving her, leaving the life they'd built, the reputation they shared. The ceremony is in 2 weeks, he said quietly. Just give me until then. Afterward, I'll tell Eliza everything. Valerie studied him, doubt etched across her features. You've been saying that for months. This time I mean it. Prove it, she challenged. Let me come to the ceremony. What? Thad recoiled. That's insane. Is it? If you're really planning to tell Eliza right after, what difference does it make? Introduce me as your new financial administrator. Let me see with my own eyes that you're committed to ending this charade. The thought of Valerie and Eliza in the same room made Thad's chest tighten. That's not going to happen. Then I'll tell her myself. Valerie reached for the door handle. Maybe tonight. I know where you live, remember? That massive lakeside mansion you gave me a private tour of while Eliza was visiting her sister. You wouldn't. Valerie's expression softened slightly. I don't want to hurt her, Thad, but I won't let you keep stringing us both along. I'm having your baby. Your actual baby, not some story you made up. This child deserves a father who acknowledges them openly. Just give me the 2 weeks, please. His voice cracked slightly. Come to the ceremony if you want. Just promise you won't say anything to Eliza beforehand. A small, triumphant smile lifted the corner of Valerie's mouth. Was that so hard? Text me the details. She opened the door and stepped out, then leaned back in. Oh, and Thad? Don't even think about uninviting me. I've saved all your messages and photos. Wouldn't want those finding their way to Eliza's phone during your vows, would we? As Valerie walked away, Thad slammed his palm against the steering wheel. How had he lost control so completely? He'd built his construction empire through careful planning and risk management. He'd navigated economic downturns, fought off larger companies trying to push into Bellwood, and cultivated relationships with everyone who mattered in 3 counties. Now his personal life was collapsing like a building with a faulty foundation. His phone rang again. Eliza. This time he answered. Hey, honey. He worked to steady his voice. There you are. Eliza's melodic voice filled the car through the Bluetooth. I just left the caterer. Wait until you see the cake design they proposed. It's spectacular. Can't wait, he managed. Are you feeling all right? You sound stressed. Just the usual work stuff. Nothing to worry about. Well, don't be late tonight. The Donovans are coming for dinner, remember? Judge Donovan is so excited to officiate our ceremony. Right, the Donovans. Thad closed his eyes briefly. Judge Robert Donovan, Bellwood's most respected citizen and one of Thad's oldest friends. The man who'd officiated their wedding 15 years ago and who believed, like everyone else, that Thad Hemingway was the luckiest man in Wyoming. I'll be home by 6, Thad promised. Perfect. Oh, and Caroline sent over those financial reports you wanted me to review for the foundation. That woman is a godsend. The Hemingway Foundation, another of Thad's public relations masterstrokes. Established after they'd failed their final round of fertility treatments, the foundation provided grants to couples struggling with infertility. The entire town had applauded their generosity while privately pitying their childlessness. I don't know what I'd do without Caroline, Thad agreed, thinking about how his assistant had begun looking at him differently in recent weeks. Caroline Weber missed nothing. It was what made her exceptional at her job. She'd been watching him with narrowed eyes, noting his extended absences, the private calls he took outside the office, the changes in his schedule. I love you, Eliza said. Thad swallowed hard. Love you too. After hanging up, he sat in the silent car staring at the concrete wall before him. 2 weeks until the ceremony. 2 weeks to figure out how to prevent his two separate lives from colliding catastrophically. Back in his office, he found Caroline waiting with a stack of documents requiring his signature. "Everything all right, Mr. Hemingway?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "Fine. Why do you ask? You seem distracted lately, and I noticed Ms. Reeves in the parking lot earlier." Thad's pen paused mid-signature. "Did you?" It wasn't a question, and Caroline didn't treat it as one. "Mrs. Hemingway also called while you were out. She mentioned adding Ms. Reeves to the invitation list for the ceremony. Something about you wanting to include key employees?" The pen snapped in Thad's hand, blue ink staining his fingers. "I'll handle the guest list, Caroline." "Of course." She handed him a tissue. "By the way, the bank called about those transfers to the Cayman account. They need additional verification." Thad's heart stuttered. "What did you tell them?" "That you'd call back." Caroline's gaze was direct, unflinching. "Should I be concerned, Mr. Hemingway? As your assistant, I need to know if there are irregularities I should be prepared for." "Everything is completely above board," Thad said firmly. "The Cayman account is for the property acquisition in River Pines. Tax purposes." Caroline nodded slowly. "And the other withdrawals? The ones to the numbered account in Switzerland?" Thad felt sweat beading at his hairline. The numbered account was his emergency fund, money even Eliza didn't know about, money that would support Valerie and the baby if everything fell apart. "Also legitimate business expenses," he said. "Is there something specific troubling you, Caroline?" She held his gaze for a long moment. "Mrs. Hemingway is not just my employer's wife. She's my friend. Has been since college." The implied warning hung in the air between them. "Your loyalty to both of us is appreciated," Thad said carefully. "And unnecessary. Everything is fine." Caroline nodded once and turned to leave, then paused at the door. "The surrogate, the one carrying your baby. Mrs. Hemingway mentioned she hasn't been able to reach her this week. She's worried." Thad's mouth went dry. "I'll look into it." After Caroline left, Thad unlocked his desk drawer and removed a burner phone, the one he used to pose as Amy, the fictional surrogate. He'd have to send Eliza some reassuring texts from her. Another lie piled onto the mountain of deception that grew higher each day. His regular phone buzzed with a text from Valerie. "Dinner tonight. We still have details to discuss." Before he could reply, another text arrived from an unknown number. He opened it to find a photo of himself and Valerie entering the mountain cabin, her hand in his, dated just last week. The message below it read, "Counting down to the vow renewal ceremony. Tick-tock, Mr. Hemingway." Thad's hands shook so badly, he dropped the phone onto his desk. Someone was watching him. Someone new. As his mind raced through possibilities, a horrifying thought emerged. What if it was Caroline? Her loyalty to Eliza, her pointed questions about the financial transfers, her mention of the surrogate. The walls of his carefully constructed life weren't just cracking, they were about to come crashing down around him. And the clock was indeed ticking. 14 days until a ceremony where he would stand before the entire town, his wife at his side, and promise fidelity for another 15 years. 14 days to prevent complete destruction, or perhaps 14 days to prepare for it. The anonymous text message haunted Thad throughout the evening with the Donovans. While Judge Robert Donovan reminisced about officiating their wedding 15 years ago and his wife Martha gushed over Eliza's plans for the nursery, Thad's mind churned with possibilities. Who was watching him? What did they want? "Don't you think, Thad?" Eliza's voice cut through his thoughts. "I'm sorry, what was that?" He smiled apologetically, reaching for his wineglass. "I was just telling Martha how excited you are to finally be a father." Eliza's eyes sparkled in the candlelight, her hand unconsciously drifting to her own flat stomach, a gesture that twisted the knife of guilt deeper. "Oh, absolutely," Thad recovered quickly. "It's all I think about." That much, at least, wasn't a lie. Judge Donovan raised his glass. "To new beginnings and expanding families." "To family," Thad echoed, the word like ash in his mouth. After dinner, while the others settled in the living room, Thad excused himself to take a work call. In his home office, he stared at the anonymous message again before typing a response. "Who is this? What do you want?" The reply came seconds later. "Just an interested observer. For now." Thad's hands trembled as he typed, "Money? Is that what you want?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, Not everyone can be bought, Mr. Hemingway. Unlike your pregnant financial administrator. Cold sweat broke out across Thad's forehead. He was about to respond when Eliza appeared in the doorway. Everything okay? The Donovans are leaving. Thad quickly locked his phone. Fine, just a subcontractor problem. He forced a smile. Let's say goodnight to our guests. Later that night, after Eliza had fallen asleep, Thad slipped out of bed and returned to his office. He'd made his fortune assessing risks and finding solutions. This was just another problem to solve. He called Valerie. It's midnight, she answered, her voice groggy. We need a new plan, he said without preamble. I want you to come to the ceremony as my cousin from Boston. A pause. You want me to what? It makes sense, you'll be there like you wanted. But as my distant cousin, someone Eliza's never met because my side of the family is small and scattered. Let me get this straight. Valerie's voice had lost all traces of sleepiness. Your solution is to add another lie to this tower of deception? Have you completely lost your mind? Someone's watching us, Thad hissed. I got an anonymous message with a photo of us at the cabin, threatening to expose everything. That got her attention. What? Who? I don't know. But if you show up as my employee, it'll raise questions. As my cousin, you have a reason to be there. And what about this? Valerie challenged. Your cousin is visibly pregnant. No one will connect those dots. We'll say you're married. Your husband couldn't make it. You'll wear a wedding ring. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Valerie sighed. This is insane, Thad. Do you have a better idea? Because in 13 days, someone is planning to blow up our lives in front of everyone we know. More silence. Then, fine, I'll be your cousin, but I have conditions. Name them. First, you transfer the trust fund money immediately, not after the baby is born. Second, you put my name on that lakeside property you mentioned, the one you were saving for investment purposes. Thad swallowed hard. The lakeside lot was prime real estate he'd been holding back from development, his safety net if the business ever faced trouble. And third, Valerie continued, after the ceremony, you tell Eliza everything. That day. No delays, no excuses. Done. Thad agreed quickly, too quickly. I don't believe you, Valerie said flatly. But I'll play along for now. Send me the details for this ridiculous charade. After hanging up, Thad opened his laptop and transferred money to the trust fund he'd established for the baby. He hesitated on the property transfer. That would require documentation, a paper trail he wasn't ready to create. His phone buzzed with another message from the unknown number. Cousin from Boston? Creative. Hope Eliza doesn't ask too many questions about your family tree. Thad froze. Whoever was watching had heard his conversation with Valerie. His home office, his phone, everything was compromised. Sleep was impossible that night. By morning, paranoia had taken firm root. Every employee greeting, every knowing look from Caroline, every casual question from Eliza felt loaded with hidden meaning. You seem tense, Caroline observed 3 days later, placing a stack of contracts on his desk. Ceremony nerves. Thad signed the documents without reading them. Just busy. The Seattle investors upped their commitment for River Pines. We need to break ground sooner than planned. Caroline didn't move. Mrs. Hemingway called. She's concerned about the surrogate again. Thad looked up sharply. What did she say? That the woman hasn't been responding to her texts for days. She's worried something's wrong with the baby. The fictional surrogate. Another problem demanding his attention. Thad reached for the burner phone in his drawer. I'll handle it. Will you? Caroline's tone was uncharacteristically sharp. Because avoiding problems doesn't make them disappear, Mr. Hemingway. Their eyes locked in a silent battle. For 12 years, Caroline Weber had been the consummate professional, discreet, efficient, loyal. But there was a new edge to her manner lately, a subtle challenge in her questions. Is there something specific you'd like to discuss, Caroline? She seemed to consider her words carefully. Eliza invited me to lunch yesterday. She showed me the nursery designs. She's incredibly happy about becoming a mother. The unspoken accusation hung between them. As am I, Thad replied evenly. I hope so. Caroline turned to leave, then added, by the way, the bank called again about those transfers, and Valerie Reeves requested time off the week after your ceremony. The walls closed in a little tighter. That evening at the lakeside mansion he and Eliza had built 5 years earlier, Thad found his wife surrounded by photo albums in their living room. What's all this? He asked, loosening his tie. Memory lane. Eliza smiled up at him. At 40, she remained as striking as when they'd met, her dark hair now elegantly streaked with silver, laugh lines framing intelligent brown eyes. "I'm putting together a photo display for the ceremony. Look at us back then." She held up a photo of their first date, a charity gala where they'd met. Thad, 10 pounds lighter and with darker hair, grinning confidently beside a radiant young Eliza. "God, we were just kids," he murmured, sitting beside her. "Remember what you said to me that night?" Eliza's eyes sparkled with the memory. "That you were the most intelligent woman I'd ever met, and I'd do anything to impress you." She laughed. "And then you proceeded to tell me all about your bold plans to transform construction in Wyoming. You were the only person who actually believed I could do it." Eliza reached for his hand. "I still believe in you, Thad. Always have." The sincerity in her voice pierced him. For a fleeting moment he considered telling her everything. The affair, the pregnancy, the financial maneuvers he'd been making as the business faced headwinds he'd hidden from everyone. The truth would devastate her, but at least it would be honest devastation. Instead, he squeezed her hand and said, "We should get some rest. Big day tomorrow with the ceremony rehearsal." Later, in the darkness of their bedroom, Eliza's voice floated softly. "I've been thinking about names for the baby." Thad stared at the ceiling. "Oh? I was thinking, if it's a boy, maybe Robert, after Judge Donovan. He's been such a good friend to us." A fresh wave of guilt crashed over Thad. "Robert is a good name. And for a girl, I was thinking Hope, because that's what this baby represents for us after everything we've been through. Hope." The bitter irony wasn't lost on Thad. The child, his actual child with Valerie, had been conceived not in hope but in deception, and now that deception was spiraling beyond his control. The wedding rehearsal the next day brought new complications. Caroline arrived early to help coordinate, her watchful eyes following Thad's every move. Judge Donovan practiced the ceremony with avuncular enthusiasm, reminiscing about their original wedding, and Eliza glowed with happiness, accepting congratulations about the baby from everyone. "When is your surrogate due again?" Martha Donovan asked during the rehearsal dinner. 3 months, Eliza replied. "Just about when the River Pines project breaks ground," Judge Donovan added. "You'll be juggling a newborn and your biggest development yet, Thad." "Speaking of River Pines," Caroline interjected smoothly, "have the foreign investors wired the final commitment yet? The ones requiring the offshore accounts?" Thad nearly choked on his drink. Caroline knew perfectly well there were no foreign investors for River Pines. It was a domestic project, financed primarily through local banks and the investment group from Seattle. The offshore accounts were his private escape hatches, funds he'd been siphoning from the company for months as certain projects faltered. "We're still finalizing those details," he managed. Caroline nodded, her expression neutral. "I see. And will your family be attending the ceremony, Thad? You rarely speak of them." "A few," he replied cautiously. "My cousin from Boston just confirmed." "I didn't know you had family in Boston." Eliza looked surprised. "You always said your relatives were mainly in the Pacific Northwest." "Distant relation," Thad said quickly. "On my mother's side, she reached out recently, wanted to reconnect." "How lovely." Eliza's face lit up. "Family is so important, especially now with the baby coming. What's her name?" "Valerie," Thad answered before he could stop himself. Using her real first name had been stupid, a rookie mistake born of stress and sleep deprivation, but it was too late to take it back. "Valerie?" Eliza repeated. "Well, I look forward to meeting her. I should add her to the seating chart." "I'll take care of it," Thad said quickly. "She's, a bit shy. Best to seat her somewhere quiet." As the evening wound down, Thad received another text from his anonymous watcher. "Cousin Valerie from Boston. Getting sloppy with the details, Mr. Hemingway. Better hope no one asks too many questions about your mother's side of the family. 10 days until the ceremony." The next week passed in a blur of preparations, paranoia, and barely contained panic. Thad swept his office, car, and home for listening devices, but found nothing. He changed all his passwords, used only secure messaging apps with Valerie, and avoided saying anything incriminating aloud. His anonymous watcher remained frustratingly elusive, sending occasional texts that proved they were still monitoring him. Each message increased Thad's conviction that it must be someone close, an employee, a friend, perhaps even Caroline herself. 4 days before the ceremony, Thad met Valerie at a diner 2 towns over to finalize their plan. "You look terrible," she observed as he slid into the booth. Thad ran a hand across his stubbled jaw. Haven't been sleeping well. Having second thoughts about our arrangement. No, he answered too quickly. Everything's set. You'll arrive as Valerie Hemingway Palmer. Your husband Michael is a surgeon who couldn't get away from his hospital duties. You'll wear this. He slid a small box across the table. Valerie opened it to reveal a platinum wedding band. Classy touch. Wear it on your right hand until the ceremony, then switch to left before you arrive. She slipped the ring on, studying its fit. And after the ceremony? When do you plan to tell Eliza the truth? That evening, Thad lied. We'll have a moment alone, and I'll explain everything. Valerie's green eyes narrowed. Why don't I believe you? Because trust isn't your strong suit, Thad retorted. I've done everything you asked. The trust fund is funded. The property paperwork is being drawn up, but not signed. It will be. After the ceremony. Valerie leaned forward. Let me be very clear, Thad. If you don't tell Eliza the truth immediately after the ceremony, I will. I'm done being your dirty secret. It won't come to that, Thad assured her, while mentally calculating how to prevent exactly that scenario. Perhaps a sudden business emergency that would require him to leave the reception early? Or an arranged call from the Seattle investors. As they parted in the parking lot, Valerie stopped him with a hand on his arm. Just so you know, I've made my own arrangements, in case you're planning anything stupid. Information in the right hands, to be released if anything happens to me or if you try to cut me out. The threat was clear, but Thad merely nodded. See you Saturday, Cousin Valerie. Back in Bellwood, Thad found Caroline waiting in his office, an unusual occurrence this late in the day. The final guest list, she said, handing him a folder. I need your approval for the place cards. Thad scanned the list, noting that Valerie Palmer had been added. Looks fine. And the seating arrangement. Caroline opened another folder, revealing a diagram of the reception tables. I've placed your cousin at table 7 with some of the newer employees, far from the main table, as you requested. Perfect. Caroline lingered, straightening items on his desk that didn't need straightening. Mr. Hemingway, Thad, we've worked together for 12 years. I've seen you through business crises, personal challenges, the fertility struggles with Eliza. Thad tensed. What are you saying, Caroline? I'm saying that whatever is happening now, whatever trouble you're in, there might still be a way to fix it, before Saturday. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Thad saw something beyond professional concern in Caroline's gaze. She knew, maybe not everything, but enough. I appreciate your concern, he said carefully, but everything is under control. Caroline nodded once, accepting the lie they both recognized. In that case, I'll see you tomorrow. Final preparations for the big day. After she left, Thad sank into his chair, exhaustion washing over him. The ceremony was 48 hours away. His plan, such as it was, hinged on getting through the event without incident. Then, what? He'd been so focused on maintaining the deception that he hadn't truly considered what came after. Tell Eliza the truth, as he'd promised Valerie. Watch his marriage implode, his reputation crumble, potentially lose control of his company, or find a way to silence Valerie permanently. The thought had crept into his mind during sleepless nights, dark, desperate scenarios he'd pushed away in daylight. His phone buzzed with a message from the unknown number. 48 hours until showtime. Will the real Valerie please stand up? Followed by another. Or should I do the honors? Thad's blood ran cold. His anonymous tormentor wasn't just watching anymore. They were threatening direct intervention. The ceremony wasn't just at risk of disruption. It was guaranteed, unless he acted first. He dialed Valerie's number with shaking fingers. Change of plans, he said when she answered. We need to meet. Tonight. Why? What's happened? Someone knows. About us, about the ceremony plan, everything. And they're threatening to expose it all during the event. Who? Valerie's voice sharpened with alarm. I don't know, but we need a new strategy. Meet me at the cabin in an hour. After hanging up, Thad opened his desk drawer and removed the small revolver he kept for protection. For the first time in his life, he considered using it for something beyond self-defense. The mountain roads were dark and winding as he drove toward the remote cabin. His headlights illuminated swirling snow, an unexpected spring storm that matched his turbulent thoughts. One way or another, this would end tonight. Either he'd find a solution with Valerie or the alternative hung in his mind, unfinished but darkly present. As the cabin came into view, he saw Valerie's Audi already parked outside. Light glowed from within. She'd arrived before him and let herself in with the key he'd given her months ago. Thad slipped the revolver into his coat pocket. Just as a precaution, he told himself. Just in case. The weight of the gun, the isolated cabin, the woman waiting inside who held the power to destroy everything he'd built, all of it converged into a moment of clarity. There would be no perfect solution, no clean escape. Whatever happened next would change his life irrevocably. 48 hours until the ceremony that was supposed to celebrate 15 years of marriage, but might instead expose 15 years of the man he'd truly become. Thad stepped out of his car into the swirling snow and walked toward the cabin door, his decision made. The morning of the vow renewal ceremony arrived with picture-perfect Wyoming weather, crystalline blue skies stretching over snow-capped mountains, as if nature itself approved of the celebration. Workers transformed the Hemingway Estate's lakeside grounds into a romantic wonderland, with white chairs arranged in neat rows facing an elegant floral arch where Judge Donovan would officiate. In the master bedroom, Thad adjusted his tie for the third time, his reflection in the mirror revealing the toll of the past 48 hours, the slight tremor in his hands, the shadows beneath his eyes. The revolver from his office drawer now rested in the safe behind his closet's false wall. He hadn't used it at the cabin 2 nights ago, despite the dark thoughts that had accompanied him there. Instead, he and Valerie had reached an uneasy truce. She would attend as planned, playing the role of distant cousin, and he would announce his intention to tell Eliza the truth immediately after the ceremony. Whether he actually planned to follow through remained his secret. "You look handsome," Eliza said, appearing in the doorway in her silk robe, hair and makeup already complete for the ceremony, but troubled. "Second thoughts about renewing your vows with me?" Her tone was light, teasing. Thad forced a smile. "Never. Just worried about the Seattle investors. Their point man has been calling non-stop. No business today," Eliza chided, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "Today is about us, our future, our family." Her hand drifted to her stomach in that unconscious gesture that had become so painful for Thad to witness. "You're right," he said, turning to kiss her forehead. "I'll put work aside." "Good," she smiled, "because I have a surprise for you later." "A surprise?" "You'll see." After the ceremony, her eyes twinkled with excitement before she slipped away to finish dressing. Thad's phone buzzed with a text from his anonymous tormentor. T-3 hours. Tick-tock. Downstairs, the house buzzed with activity. Caterers arranging elaborate food displays. Florists adding final touches to centerpieces. Caroline directing it all with clipboard in hand. When she spotted Thad, she approached with purposeful strides. "Everything's on schedule," she reported professionally. "Guests will begin arriving at 1. Judge Donovan is already here in the study. He asked to speak with you." "Thank you, Caroline." Thad hesitated, then added, "And thank you for everything. Your loyalty has meant a great deal." Something flickered across Caroline's expression. "Regret, perhaps?" "I've always done what I thought was right, Mr. Hemingway." The cryptic response settled uneasily as Thad made his way to the study. Judge Donovan stood examining the bookshelves, a tumbler of whiskey already in hand despite the early hour. "Thad, my boy." The judge's ruddy face creased with a smile. "The big day is upon us." "Indeed it is. Caroline said you wanted to see me?" "Just a moment of your time." The older man's expression grew serious. 15 years ago I stood before you and Eliza as you made promises to each other. Remarkable woman, your wife. Intelligent, compassionate, loyal. "She is," Thad agreed carefully. "Which is why," the judge continued, swirling his whiskey, "I was so disturbed to hear certain rumors." Thad's throat constricted. "Rumors? About financial irregularities at Hemingway Construction, offshore accounts, missing funds." Relief flooded Thad's system. This was about business, not Valerie. "Market fluctuations have required some creative accounting, but everything is above board, I assure you." Judge Donovan studied him. "I've known you since you were breaking ground on your first development, Thad. I vouched for you with investors, introduced you to people who mattered. My reputation is tied to yours." "And it's secure," Thad insisted. "The business is solid." "I hope so." The judge drained his glass. "Because I'd hate to think I've been wrong about you all these years, about the kind of man you are." Before Thad could respond, Caroline appeared in the doorway. "Your first guests are arriving, Mr. Hemingway." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of handshakes, small talk, and mounting anxiety. Thad scanned each new arrival, dreading and anticipating Valerie's entrance. His anonymous messenger remained silent, which only increased his paranoia. Was the threat a bluff, or was something worse than expected about to unfold? At 15 minutes before the ceremony, Caroline approached him on the terrace. "Everyone is seated. Judge Donovan is in position." She paused. "Your cousin Valerie arrived. She's quite pregnant." Thad's pulse jumped. "Where is she?" "Seated at table 7, as arranged. She's wearing green." Thad glanced toward the seating area and spotted her immediately. Copper hair gleaming in the sunlight, emerald dress highlighting her pregnancy. The wedding band prominently displayed on her left hand. She caught his eye and lifted her champagne glass in mocking salute. "It's time, Mr. Hemingway," Caroline said quietly. "Eliza is waiting to walk down the aisle." The ceremony setting was breathtaking. 200 guests seated beneath a canopy of fairy lights and white flowers, the blue waters of the lake providing a serene backdrop. Judge Donovan stood beneath the floral arch, formal in his black robes, and at the end of the white carpet serving as an aisle, Eliza waited on the arm of her older brother, radiant in a champagne-colored gown that flowed around her. As the string quartet began playing, Thad took his position beside Judge Donovan, scanning the audience one final time. Valerie sat rigidly in her assigned seat, her expression unreadable. Nearby, Caroline stood with her tablet, coordinating the event flow. Eliza began her walk toward him, smiling through happy tears, and for a moment, Thad remembered why he'd fallen in love with her 15 years ago. Her quiet strength, her unwavering belief in him, the life they'd built together. Shame washed over him in a suffocating wave. When she reached him and took his hands, Eliza whispered, "I love you, Thad, today and always." Judge Donovan began the ceremony with practiced eloquence, speaking of enduring love and renewed commitment. Thad heard little of it, his attention split between Eliza's adoring gaze and the constant fear of disruption. 15 years ago, the judge continued, Thaddeus and Eliza stood before me and made promises to each other. Today they reaffirm those vows, strengthened by the years they've shared and the family they are about to begin. At the mention of family, Thad couldn't help glancing toward Valerie. She remained seated, but her posture had tensed, her hand protectively covering her stomach. Before they exchanged their renewed vows, Judge Donovan said, "Thaddeus and Eliza have prepared personal messages for each other. Eliza, would you like to go first?" Eliza nodded, taking a deep breath. "Thad, when we met, you told me you had dreams bigger than anyone believed possible. I believed in those dreams, in your vision, in your determination. These 15 years haven't always been easy, especially our struggle to have a child, but they've been the most meaningful of my life." She reached into a hidden pocket in her gown and withdrew a small envelope. "Which is why my gift to you, on this day of renewal, is this." Confused, Thad accepted the envelope and opened it with unsteady fingers. Inside was a sonogram image. His heart stopped. "I've been in contact with our surrogate every day," Eliza continued, her voice thick with emotion. "She sent this yesterday. Our miracle, Thad, our baby." Murmurs of delight rippled through the audience. Thad stared at the image, his brain struggling to process what was happening. There was no surrogate. This was impossible. "I don't understand," he whispered. Eliza's smile faltered slightly. "It's our baby's first picture. I wanted to surprise you." From the corner of his eye, Thad saw Valerie rising from her seat, her face a mask of fury. In the same moment, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Another message from his tormentor, no doubt. "Eliza," he began desperately, "there's something—" "Actually," a voice called from the audience, "there's something everyone here should know." The guests turned in unison. But it wasn't Valerie who had spoken. It was Caroline Weber, standing with her tablet displayed before her. "Caroline?" Eliza looked confused. "What's going on?" "I'm sorry, Eliza," Caroline said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent gathering. "But there is no surrogate." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Eliza's hand flew to her mouth. "What are you saying?" Caroline walked slowly toward the arch. "The woman you've been texting with?" "That was Thad, using a burner phone." "That's ridiculous," Thad interjected, panic rising. "Caroline, you're fired. Security, please remove her." "The real mother of Thad's child," Caroline continued inexorably, "is right here." She pointed at Valerie, who now stood frozen in the aisle. "Valerie Reeves isn't his cousin from Boston. She's Hemingway Construction's financial administrator and Thad's mistress for the past 8 months. The stunned silence erupted into chaotic murmurs. Eliza took a step back from Thad, her face draining of color as she looked between him and Valerie. "Tell me this isn't true," she whispered. Before Thad could respond, Valerie strode forward. "It's all true," she announced, her voice trembling with emotion. "I came to Bellwood to start over after an abusive relationship. Thad hired me, pursued me, told me his marriage was essentially over. When I got pregnant, he created this elaborate lie about a surrogate to explain why Eliza would suddenly have a baby." Eliza swayed on her feet, her brother rushing forward to support her. "The texts, the updates, the sonogram, fabricated," Caroline answered gently. "There is no surrogate, Eliza. Never was. The sonogram is probably from the internet." Eliza turned to Thad, her expression transforming from confusion to dawning horror. "All this time, the fertility treatments, our foundation, it was all a lie?" "Not all of it," Thad pleaded. "I love you, Eliza. Yes, I made a terrible mistake with Valerie, but—" "Mistake?" Valerie's voice rose dangerously. "You were planning to pass off our child as coming from some fictional surrogate. You were going to let your wife raise our baby without ever telling her the truth." Judge Donovan stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "Thaddeus, is this true?" "Robert, please," Thad began, but the older man cut him off. "Answer the question. Were you planning this grotesque deception?" The weight of 200 stairs pressed down on Thad. His carefully constructed world was collapsing in real time, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," he said finally. Judge Donovan's expression hardened with disgust. "In all my years on the bench, I've seen many despicable acts, but this—" His voice faltered, and he pressed a hand to his chest. "Robert?" Martha Donovan called out in alarm, rushing forward as her husband's face contorted with pain. The judge staggered, clutching his chest, then collapsed heavily against the floral arch, sending flowers and fabric tumbling. Chaos erupted as Martha screamed for help, and guests with medical training rushed forward. In the confusion, Eliza backed away from Thad, her expression one of absolute betrayal. "Don't follow me," she said when he reached for her. "Don't you dare touch me." As paramedics arrived and worked on Judge Donovan, the ceremony dissolved into a surreal tableau of medical emergency and personal catastrophe. Guests gathered in shocked clusters, whispering and casting furtive glances at the principal players in the unfolding drama. Valerie stood apart, one hand protectively over her belly, watching as Eliza disappeared into the mansion with her brother and several friends. Though she'd wanted the truth revealed, the raw pain in Eliza's eyes had affected her more deeply than expected. Hours later, after Judge Donovan had been stabilized and transported to the hospital with a diagnosis of mild heart attack, the estate stood nearly empty. Catering staff quietly packed up uneaten food, workers dismantled the ceremony space, and Caroline supervised it all with grim efficiency. Thad sat alone in his study, a tumbler of scotch in his hand, staring at his phone. The last message from his anonymous tormentor now made perfect sense. Surprise. C.W. Caroline Weber. His trusted assistant had been his downfall. A soft knock at the door preceded Caroline herself, her expression coldly professional. "The vendors are settled. I've authorized final payments from the company account." "You did this," Thad said quietly. "You sent those messages. You threatened me." "I gave you a chance to come clean on your own," Caroline replied. "Multiple chances, in fact. You chose deception right to the end. Why wait until today? Why not tell Eliza sooner?" Caroline's eyes hardened. "Because she deserved to see exactly who you are in front of everyone who matters. And because it gave me time to gather evidence of your financial misdeeds as well." Thad's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "The offshore accounts. The money you've been siphoning from the company. The River Pines development that's severely underfunded because you've been stealing from it." She placed her tablet on his desk, displaying spreadsheets of transactions. "I've already shared this with the company board and with the SEC." Thad lunged for the tablet, but Caroline smoothly moved it beyond his reach. "It's too late. The wheels are in motion." "You've worked for me for 12 years, Thad growled. "Your loyalty—" "My loyalty was to the company and to Eliza," Caroline interrupted. "Not to you personally. Not when you were destroying both." She turned to leave, then paused. "Eliza asked me to tell you she'll be staying with her brother indefinitely. Her lawyer will be in touch." After Caroline left, Thad sat in the empty house, the magnitude of his loss washing over him in waves. His marriage, his reputation, potentially his company and freedom, all forfeit because of his choices. His phone buzzed with a text from Valerie. "I'm leaving town tonight. Don't try to find me. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the child support." 3 days after the disastrous ceremony, Bellwood buzzed with little else. Judge Donovan had been released from the hospital, and rumors swirled about Hemingway Construction's financial stability as several investors publicly distanced themselves from Thad. Eliza had indeed retreated to her brother's ranch outside town, refusing all contact except through her newly retained attorney. Initial divorce papers had already been delivered to Thad, the terms punitive in the extreme. Valerie had disappeared without a trace. Her apartment stood empty, her position at Hemingway Construction officially vacant. Some speculated she'd returned to Chicago, others that she'd fled even further to escape the scandal. What no one in Bellwood knew was that Valerie hadn't left Wyoming at all. She'd checked into a small hotel in Jackson, 90 minutes away, where she'd spent 2 days crying, raging and questioning her own role in the disaster. On the 3rd day, she'd received an unexpected call. "Ms. Reeves, this is James Caldwell, Eliza Hemingway's brother. My sister would like to meet with you privately." The request had stunned Valerie. Why would she want to see me? She didn't share her reasons, but I believe it would be beneficial for you both. Which was how, on the 4th day after the ceremony, Valerie found herself driving up a long dirt road to the Caldwell family ranch, her stomach knotted with anxiety, not entirely related to her pregnancy. The ranch house was rustic but expansive, with a sweeping view of the Tetons. James Caldwell, a taciturn man with Eliza's intelligent eyes, met her at the door. "She's on the back porch," he said simply, leading Valerie through the house. Eliza sat wrapped in a blanket despite the mild day, staring out at the mountains. She'd lost weight in just a few days, her cheekbones more pronounced, dark circles shadowing her eyes. When she turned to look at Valerie, her gaze was direct but surprisingly free of hatred. "Thank you for coming," Eliza said quietly. "Please sit." Valerie lowered herself awkwardly into the adjacent chair, hyper-aware of her pregnant belly, the physical embodiment of her affair with Eliza's husband. "I won't waste time with small talk," Eliza began. "I asked you here because I need to understand. When did it start? How much did he tell you about me, about our marriage?" Valerie took a deep breath. 8 months ago. He said your marriage was essentially over, that you stayed together for appearance's sake. He said you'd both accepted you wouldn't have children." Eliza's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. "And when you got pregnant?" At first he panicked. Then he came up with the surrogate story. "I thought it was sick, but he convinced me it was temporary just until he could find the right time to tell you about us." "Did you know he was planning to have me raise your child without ever telling me the truth?" Valerie shook her head vehemently. "No, I suspected he might try something like that, which is why I insisted on coming to the ceremony. I wanted to see for myself what he would do." "You were going to expose him if he didn't?" "Yes." Valerie met Eliza's gaze directly. "I'm not proud of my role in this. I should have realized sooner that his stories about your marriage were lies. But I swear, I never intended for your humiliation to be public. That was Caroline's doing." A ghost of a smile touched Eliza's lips. "Caroline has been my friend since college. She was looking out for me in her way." They sat in silence for a moment, 2 women connected by the actions of one man, trying to find their footing in the aftermath. "What will you do now?" Eliza finally asked. "Leave Wyoming, start over somewhere else, again." Valerie sighed, running a hand over her belly. "I seem to have a talent for choosing the wrong men." Eliza studied her thoughtfully. "What if you didn't leave?" "What?" "Bellwood is my home. I have no intention of being driven away by Thad's actions," Eliza said, a new resolve entering her voice. "And I've been thinking about the company. Hemingway Construction employs half the town. If it collapses under the weight of Thad's financial misdeeds, a lot of innocent people suffer." Valerie frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "A partnership," Eliza replied simply. "You're pregnant with Thad's child, a child who deserves stability and support. You're also a qualified financial administrator who could help untangle the mess he's made of the company's finances." "You want me to work for you?" Valerie couldn't hide her shock. "With me," Eliza corrected. "The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss leadership options given Thad's situation. I plan to propose myself as interim CEO with you as CFO. Together, we could save the company, while Thad faces whatever legal consequences are coming. Valerie stared at her, struggling to process the unexpected proposal. Why would you want to work with me of all people? Eliza's expression hardened. Because Thad betrayed us both, used us both, and I refused to let him destroy anything else. She leaned forward. Consider it, Valerie. We could turn this tragedy into something powerful. Two women rebuilding what one man tried to tear down. As the sun set over the Tetons, casting long shadows across the porch, Valerie and Eliza began tentatively discussing possibilities. Neither yet realized that this unexpected alliance would not only save Hemingway Construction, but transform both their lives in ways neither could imagine. The Hemingway Construction Board meeting began in tense silence. 8 men and 2 women, most of them longtime Bellwood residents who'd invested in Thad's vision years ago, sat around the mahogany conference table, expressions grim as they reviewed the financial documents Caroline had compiled. "These offshore transfers," said Martin Reynolds, the silver-haired bank president who chaired the board. "Can you verify their purpose, Ms. Weber?" Caroline stood beside a digital presentation displaying transaction records. No legitimate business purpose has been documented. The money trail suggests Mr. Hemingway was creating a personal safety net separate from company assets. In simple terms, board member Janet Phillips interjected, he was stealing. That's for the authorities to determine, Caroline replied diplomatically. What's clear is that several projects, particularly River Pines, are severely underfunded as a result of these transfers. The boardroom doors opened, and every head turned as Eliza entered, followed by Valerie. The unexpected pair caused a ripple of whispers. "Mrs. Hemingway," Reynolds began awkwardly, "we weren't expecting—" "I imagine not," Eliza said, taking a seat at the table's empty end. "But as a major shareholder in this company, I believe I should be present for discussions about its future." Reynolds cleared his throat. "Of course. And Ms. Reeves is here because she understands the company's finances better than most people in this room," Eliza replied evenly. "And because what affects Hemingway Construction affects her child's future, Thad's child." The blunt acknowledgement of the situation silenced further questions. Valerie sat beside Eliza, placing a folder on the table. "I've prepared an analysis of the company's current financial position," she said, her professional demeanor belying any discomfort, "and a proposed restructuring plan that could prevent bankruptcy." For the next hour, Valerie walked the board through her findings, the hidden weaknesses in Thad's apparent empire, the projects at risk, and the steps needed to stabilize the company. With each slide, the board members' expressions shifted from skepticism to reluctant respect. "This is all very thorough," Reynolds said when she finished, "but it doesn't address the leadership vacuum. With Thad facing potential criminal charges and his reputation in tatters, who will run Hemingway Construction?" Eliza straightened in her chair. "I will." The stunned silence that followed was broken by Janet Phillips' incredulous laugh. "With all due respect, Eliza, you're an English teacher. What do you know about running a construction company? I know enough to recognize that what this company needs right now isn't technical expertise, it's leadership, transparency, and a restoration of trust," Eliza replied, unfazed. "I've been married to Thad for 15 years. I've attended every company function, met every major client, listened to every strategy discussion over dinner. I understand this business. And for the technical aspects," she continued, gesturing to Valerie, "I propose Ms. Reeves as Chief Financial Officer. Her financial acumen is precisely what's needed to correct the course." Reynolds exchanged glances with other board members. "You're suggesting that you and your husband's mistress run this company together? I'm suggesting that 2 qualified women who were both betrayed by the same man might be uniquely motivated to save what he tried to destroy," Eliza countered, steel entering her voice. "Judge us by our capabilities, not our connection to Thad." After Eliza and Valerie were asked to step outside, the board deliberated for nearly 2 hours. When they finally emerged, Reynolds approached with a guarded expression. "The board has voted to appoint you as interim CEO, Mrs. Hemingway, for a 6-month probationary period. Ms. Reeves is approved as interim CFO with similar terms." He hesitated. "This is unconventional, to say the least, but these are unconventional circumstances." As they walked to the parking lot, Caroline joined them with a small smile. "Congratulations. We couldn't have done it without your evidence," Eliza acknowledged. though I'm still processing the public way you chose to reveal everything." Caroline's expression didn't waver. "Would you have believed it otherwise? Or would you have given Thad another chance to weave more lies?" "She's right," Valerie said quietly. "Thad is persuasive. I fell for his stories even after experiencing a similar deception in Chicago." Eliza studied both women thoughtfully. "Then I suppose we all have healing to do, and a company to save in the process." News of Eliza and Valerie's appointment spread through Bellwood like wildfire. Initial reactions ranged from disbelief to outright hostility, particularly toward Valerie. But as the days passed and the women began implementing visible changes, town hall meetings with employees, transparent communication about the company's challenges, personal calls to nervous clients, skepticism gradually gave way to cautious support. 2 weeks after the board meeting, Eliza arrived at her office to find a local reporter waiting. "Mrs. Hemingway," the young woman began, "would you care to comment on the unusual arrangement you've made with your husband's, with Ms. Reeves?" "It's only unusual because people insist on defining us by our relationship to Thad," Eliza replied, setting down her coffee. "The reality is simpler. 2 qualified professionals working to save a company important to this community. And the personal aspect, working daily with the woman your husband cheated with." Eliza's expression remained composed. "Ms. Reeves and I share a unique understanding of Thad's capacity for deception. That creates a foundation of trust most business partnerships lack." The reporter looked surprised. "You trust her?" "More than I trust most people right now," Eliza admitted. "We were both victims of the same lie. Now we're both architects of the same solution." Across town, in the modest guest house where Valerie had relocated after returning to Bellwood, she stood before her bathroom mirror, studying her expanding silhouette. At 5 months pregnant, there was no hiding her condition, no pretending this wasn't Thad Hemingway's child growing within her. A knock at her door revealed Caroline carrying a small gift bag. "Thought you could use this," she said, handing Valerie a box containing a supportive pregnancy pillow. "My sister swore by it during her pregnancy." Valerie accepted the gift with surprise. "Thank you, I didn't think, after everything, that I'd be kind to you," Caroline finished, accepting Valerie's invitation to sit. "I blamed you at first, but I've come to realize you were as much Thad's victim as Eliza, just in a different way." "I'm not blameless," Valerie said quietly. "I chose to continue the relationship after I knew he was married, because he convinced you his marriage was already over." Caroline shrugged. "Thad has always excelled at making people believe what serves him best." They sat in companionable silence before Caroline added, "The River Pines investors called this morning. They're staying with the project thanks to your restructuring plan. You've impressed them. We still need to find the money Thad diverted. The forensic accountants are working on it," Caroline assured her. "In the meantime, how are you feeling? About the pregnancy, about everything?" Valerie's hand drifted to her stomach, terrified, excited, grateful for Eliza's unexpected support. She hesitated. "Have you heard anything about Thad?" Caroline's expression darkened. "He's holed up at the Lakeview Hotel, drinking heavily from what I hear. His lawyer advised him to stay away from company property, so he's been calling board members individually, trying to undermine the new leadership." "Is it working?" "Not so far, but Thad's always been persuasive and he built this company on personal relationships. Don't underestimate him." Meanwhile, in his hotel suite overlooking Bellwood Lake, Thad Hemingway stared at the amber liquid in his glass, the irony of his situation not lost on him. From the window, he could see the sprawling lakeside development that had made his reputation, luxury homes he could no longer enter, built by a company he no longer controlled. His phone rang, his attorney, Gregory Walsh. "Tell me something good, Greg," Thad answered. "Afraid not. The SEC has formally opened an investigation, and the local prosecutor is reviewing potential fraud charges based on the surrogate deception." Thad drained his glass. "They can't prosecute me for lying to my wife. They can if you created fake medical documents and financial agreements as part of the deception, and if company funds were used for any of it." Walsh's tone was professionally detached. "More pressing is your financial situation. Your accounts remain frozen, and the board has suspended your salary pending the investigation's outcome. What about my loans? The mortgages? The bank is calling them in, citing the morality clause. You have 30 days to repay or refinance." After hanging up, Thad hurled his empty glass against the wall, the shatter matching his internal state. How had everything collapsed so completely? Just 3 weeks ago, he'd been Bellwood's golden son, successful businessman, devoted husband, generous community benefactor. Now he was a pariah, whispered about in the same shops and restaurants where he'd once been greeted with deference. More galling than his personal downfall was the unlikely alliance between Eliza and Valerie. He'd spotted them having lunch together at Bellwood's upscale cafe 2 days earlier, the wife and mistress, united in purpose, seemingly impervious to the town's stares and whispers. The sight had triggered something primal in him. Rage, yes, but also fear. Together they knew every weakness, every lie, every vulnerability he possessed. His phone rang again. Martin Reynolds from the board. "Martin," Thad answered eagerly. "Finally, someone taking my calls." "Only to make something clear," Reynolds replied coldly. "Your efforts to undermine the new leadership won't work with me. I've known Eliza since she was a child. If she says she can do this, I believe her. She's an English teacher, for God's sake. And in 3 weeks she's shown more integrity and transparency than you have in years," Reynolds retorted. "The financials Ms. Reeves uncovered paint a disturbing picture, Thad. How long have you been shifting company funds to personal accounts?" "Those transfers were for tax efficiency," Thad insisted. "Completely legal. Tell that to the SEC." Reynolds paused. "I respected you, Thad. Many of us did. But respect has to be earned continually, not taken for granted." After the call ended, Thad stared at the darkening lake, the first stars reflecting on its surface. Reynolds had been one of his most reliable allies on the board. If he couldn't be swayed, the others were likely even further out of reach. A soft ping announced an email from Eliza's lawyer. The preliminary divorce terms were breathtaking in their severity. Eliza would retain the mansion, her full share of company stock, and half of all marital assets. Thad would be responsible for all legal fees related to the company investigations. There would be no alimony in either direction. A separate email from Valerie's attorney outlined child support expectations that, while fair, would stretch Thad's diminished resources to the breaking point. For the first time since the ceremony disaster, Thad felt the full weight of his actions. He'd lost his wife, his company, his reputation, and potentially his freedom. And for what? A series of choices that had seemed manageable in isolation, but catastrophic in some. The next morning, Eliza stood in what had been Thad's office, now hers, staring at the wall of photographs documenting Hemingway Construction's growth. Thad at various groundbreaking ceremonies, Thad shaking hands with governors and senators, Thad receiving community awards. "Should I take those down?" Caroline asked from the doorway. "Not yet," Eliza decided. "They're part of the company's history, even if that history is complicated now." Caroline placed a folder on the desk. "The agenda for today's all-staff meeting. Valerie suggested addressing the River Pines situation directly, letting employees know their jobs are secure." "Good idea." Eliza hesitated. "How are people responding to her? Honestly?" "Initially, with suspicion and judgment," Caroline admitted, "but her competence is undeniable, and there's something compelling about seeing her work alongside you. It defies expectation." "We defy a lot of expectations," Eliza murmured, adjusting the photos on the desk, now showing her with her brother's family rather than with Thad. "Any word from the forensic accountants?" "They've traced some of the missing funds to an account in the Caymans. Roughly 2 million so far. Can we recover it?" "They're working on it. The legal complications are substantial." Eliza sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Sometimes I wonder what I'm doing here, Caroline. I was happy teaching Austen and Dickens to high schoolers. Now I'm responsible for 200 employees and millions in contracts." "You're doing what needs to be done," Caroline said simply, "and you're surprisingly good at it." The all-staff meeting that afternoon filled the company's largest conference room. Employees watched with a mixture of curiosity and concern as Eliza and Valerie entered together, presenting a united front despite the whispers their presence still generated. "I know these past weeks have been unsettling," Eliza began. "The revelations about Mr. Hemingway's personal and financial decisions have cast a shadow over this company we all care about." She moved confidently to the presentation screen. "But today, I want to focus on the future. Ms. Reeves will outline our financial stabilization plan, including the latest on River Pines." As Valerie took over, presenting clear data and concrete solutions, Eliza observed the gradual shift in the room, skepticism yielding to cautious optimism as they realized their jobs might actually be secure. There will be difficult days ahead, Valerie concluded. The SEC investigation will continue. Some clients remain nervous, but the fundamentals of this company are sound, and with your continued dedication, Hemingway Construction will survive this transition. After the meeting, as employees filed out, site foreman Mike Donaldson approached Eliza. A burly man with 30 years in construction, he'd been one of Thad's first hires. "Mrs. Hemingway," he began gruffly, "I've been meaning to say something. My crew and I, we appreciate what you're doing, taking this on instead of walking away. Can't be easy working with..." His eyes flicked toward Valerie. "All things considered." "Thank you, Mike," Eliza replied. "And you can call me Eliza now. I think we're past formalities." He nodded. "The boys were wondering about the company name. Will it stay Hemingway Construction?" The question caught her off guard. She hadn't considered this aspect of the company's future, its very identity tied to the man who had betrayed it. "I don't know yet," she answered honestly, "one step at a time." Later that day, Valerie found Eliza in the company kitchen, staring pensively into a cup of tea. "Everything okay?" Valerie asked, her hand resting on her expanding belly in what had become a habitual gesture. Eliza glanced up. "Mike Donaldson asked if we'll change the company name. It made me realize how many decisions lie ahead. Decisions I never expected to face." Valerie considered this as she prepared her own herbal tea. "What do you think about the name?" "I think..." Eliza sighed. "I think Thad built something important here, something bigger than his flaws. But I also think we're creating something new from the ashes, something that deserves its own identity." "Phoenixes are reborn from ashes," Valerie mused. "Phoenix Construction." Eliza smiled slightly. "Has potential." A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind neither would have imagined possible a month earlier. "I had my ultrasound yesterday," Valerie said suddenly. "Found out the gender." Eliza's expression was difficult to read. "And it's a boy." The simple statement hung in the air, laden with significance for both women. This child, Thad's son, would connect them irrevocably, regardless of how the business relationship evolved. "Have you thought about names?" Eliza asked softly. "Not Thaddeus Jr., that's for sure," Valerie replied with a wry smile. They both laughed, the tension of the moment breaking. "I was thinking, Nathan," Valerie continued, "it means gift, or he has given. Despite everything, this baby feels like a gift to me. A new beginning." Eliza nodded thoughtfully. "Nathan, I like it." She hesitated. Would you mind if I came to your next appointment? Not to intrude, just to, I don't know, to be part of it," Valerie finished. "I'd like that. This situation is unconventional enough already. Why not embrace it fully?" As the two women continued talking outside the building, Thad sat in his car across the street, watching employees exit at day's end. The sight of Mike Donaldson and his crew leaving together, laughing at some shared joke, sent a pang of loss through him. These were men who'd followed him from project to project, who'd trusted his vision for 15 years. His phone buzzed with a text from Gregory Walsh. "SEC wants to interview you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Critical that you appear cooperative." Thad typed back, "We'll be there. Any leverage yet with the board?" Walsh's response was terse. "None." Reynolds is firmly behind the new leadership, others following his lead. As darkness fell over Bellwood, Thad remained in his car, watching the lights of the Hemingway Construction building, his building, illuminate the evening. One by one, offices went dark as staff departed, until only the corner office remained lit. Through the window, he could just make out two figures, Eliza and Valerie, deep in conversation. The sight of them together, apparently comfortable in each other's company, sparked something beyond anger or jealousy. It was like watching his replacement, not by another man, but by a partnership he'd inadvertently created through his own deception. In that moment, Thad made a decision. If he couldn't reclaim his company through persuasion or legal means, perhaps more desperate measures were called for. The SEC interview tomorrow would be crucial, his chance to reshape the narrative, to cast doubt on the financial evidence against him, and if that failed, well, he still had one card left to play, one final option that would either restore his position or destroy everything beyond recovery. As he started his car, Thad's gaze lingered on the illuminated office. What Eliza and Valerie had built in a month was impressive, but fragile. With the right pressure applied at the right point, Their unlikely alliance and the company they now controlled might still crumble. Tomorrow would determine whether Thad Hemingway would rise from the ashes of his disgrace or burn what remained to the ground, rather than watch others rebuild his legacy without him. The Bellwood Community Center buzzed with anticipation. Local reporters arranged cameras at the front, while curious townspeople filled the available seats. On stage, a podium bearing the Hemingway Construction logo stood flanked by 2 chairs. Caroline Weber surveyed the scene with a critical eye, checking her watch for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. "It's nearly time," she murmured to James Caldwell, who hovered protectively near the side entrance where his sister would enter. "Is this necessary?" he asked. "Eliza's been through enough public scrutiny." "It wasn't my idea," Carolyn replied. "Your sister insisted. She said Bellwood deserves answers directly from the source." The side door opened, and Eliza entered, wearing a tailored navy suit that projected authority and confidence despite her still too thin frame. Behind her walked Valerie, her 6-month pregnancy now unmistakable beneath a modest grey dress. A hush fell over the room, followed by a swell of whispers. Martin Reynolds approached from the front row. "Mrs. Hemingway, Eliza, are you certain about this? The media will be merciless." "I'm certain," Eliza replied, her voice steady. "Hemingway Construction employs too many people in this town for us to operate in shadows. Transparency starts today." As Eliza and Valerie took their positions at the podium, cameras clicked and flashed. The juxtaposition of the 2 women, Thad Hemingway's betrayed wife and pregnant mistress, now united in purpose, created exactly the striking visual that would dominate news cycles. "Good morning," Eliza began, her teacher's voice carrying clearly through the room. "Thank you for coming. 3 weeks ago, many of you witnessed the public collapse of my marriage during what should have been a celebration of renewal. Today, I'm here to address the aftermath of that event and the future of Hemingway Construction." She paused, making eye contact with familiar faces in the crowd. "The company that bears my husband's name employs 217 people in Bellwood. It supports countless families, contributes significantly to our tax base, and has shaped the development of our town for 15 years. Its health matters to all of us." Eliza gestured to Valerie. "Ms. Reeves and I have been appointed by the board as interim CEO and CFO, respectively. Our mandate is to stabilize the company and ensure its continued operation during this period of transition." A reporter's hand shot up. "Mrs. Hemingway, how can you work alongside your husband's mistress? Isn't that emotionally impossible?" The blunt question drew gasps, but Eliza remained composed. "I understand the fascination with the personal aspects of this situation, but I'd ask you to consider, if 2 men found themselves similarly deceived by a business partner, would their decision to work together to salvage their investment be considered remarkable or simply rational?" The reporter blinked, momentarily silenced. "Ms. Reeves and I were both victims of elaborate deceptions perpetrated by the same individual," Eliza continued. "We've chosen to channel our shared experience into productive collaboration rather than misdirected animosity." Valerie stepped forward. "If I may add, the focus on our personal connection obscures the more significant story, the financial irregularities we've uncovered within Hemingway Construction, irregularities that threatened hundreds of jobs and millions in investments." She activated a screen behind them, displaying financial charts. "With the board's authorization, we initiated a forensic audit that revealed systematic diversion of company funds to offshore accounts. Approximately $4.3 million was redirected from operational accounts and project funds over the past 18 months. The revelation sent a ripple of shock through the audience. This diversion left several major projects dangerously underfunded," Valerie continued, "including the River Pines development that many local contractors depend on for future work." Another reporter stood. "Are you saying Thad Hemingway was embezzling from his own company?" "The SEC and prosecutors will determine the appropriate legal characterization," Eliza interjected diplomatically. "What's undeniable is that funds were being systematically moved outside normal business operations without board approval or shareholder knowledge. And what's being done to recover these funds?" called a voice from the back. "We've engaged forensic accountants and legal specialists," Valerie answered. "Approximately $2.8 million has already been located and frozen. Legal proceedings are underway to return those funds to company accounts. For the next 30 minutes, Eliza and Valerie alternated addressing questions with remarkable synchronicity. Eliza handling community and operational concerns, Valerie tackling financial details. Their coordinated responses projected stability and competence that visibly reassured the audience. Near the end, a local business owner stood. Given everything that's happened, will the company continue to carry the Hemingway name? Eliza exchanged a glance with Valerie before answering. Today, we're announcing the company's restructuring as Phoenix Construction, effective immediately. The Phoenix rises from ashes, transformed but carrying forward what was valuable. We believe that symbolizes our path forward. The announcement prompted unexpected applause, starting with Hemingway employees present and spreading throughout the room. As the press conference concluded, Eliza and Valerie were surrounded by well-wishers and reporters seeking additional comments. Across town, in the sparsely furnished apartment he'd been forced to rent after the hotel became too expensive, Thad Hemingway watched the live stream of the press conference, his fury building with each passing minute. The women's confidence, their united front, the announcement of the name change. Each felt like a personal attack, a deliberate erasure of his legacy. His phone rang. Gregory Walsh. "Tell me you're not watching this circus," the lawyer began without preamble. "Every humiliating second," Thad growled. "They're rebranding my company. That's the least of your concerns right now," Walsh countered. "The SEC investigator called. They've found documentation connecting you directly to the Cayman transfers, and the prosecutor is moving forward with fraud charges related to the surrogate deception." "What?" "That was personal, not business." "Not according to their evidence. They have records showing you used company resources to create false medical documents and financial agreements as part of the surrogate story, and you apparently paid for the burner phone you used to impersonate the surrogate from the company account." Thad closed his eyes, remembering his carelessness, charging the phone to the corporate card during a business trip, using the company printer for the fake documents. Small mistakes that now loomed disastrously large. "What are my options?" he asked, his voice hollow. "Plea bargain, return all the money except some jail time." Walsh's tone was clinically detached. "Or fight, risk longer sentencing, and watch your remaining assets drained by legal fees." After ending the call, Thad stared at the now frozen image on his laptop, Eliza and Valerie standing together at the podium, the new Phoenix Construction logo displayed behind them. Everything he'd built, rebranded and reclaimed by the very women he'd deceived. Something broke inside him. He'd cooperated with investigators, answered the SEC's questions, maintained a semblance of dignity through his downfall. But watching his wife and mistress dismantle and rename his life's work pushed him beyond rational thought. 3 weeks later, during a routine prenatal appointment, Valerie's doctor frowned at her blood pressure reading. "235/90, she said, rechecking the measurement. "Higher than I'd like to see at this stage. Any unusual stress lately?" Valerie laughed softly. "Where to begin? Running a company in crisis, preparing for single motherhood, working with my baby's father's wife." The doctor's expression remained serious. "Preeclampsia is a concern with first pregnancies, especially with stress. I'm putting you on modified bed rest, limited work hours, no strenuous activity, frequent monitoring." When Valerie returned to the office and shared the news, Eliza's concern was immediate and genuine. "You're moving into the guest house at my brother's ranch. Today. It's peaceful. Someone's always around if you need help, and you can work remotely when necessary." "I can't impose like that," Valerie protested. "It's not an imposition, it's a practical solution," Eliza insisted. "Your health and the baby's safety come first. The company can manage with you working reduced hours temporarily." The unexpected diagnosis accelerated a shift that had been developing gradually, from business allies to something approaching friendship. As Valerie settled into the ranch's guest house, Eliza began stopping by daily, first with work updates, then with books, healthy meals, and eventually just conversation. "You don't have to check on me every day," Valerie said one evening as they sat on the guest house porch watching the sunset. "I'm following doctor's orders." "I know," Eliza replied, her gaze distant. "But after everything, I feel responsible somehow. For this child." Valerie studied her. "He's not your responsibility, Eliza. He's Thad's son, but not yours." "Isn't he, though?" Eliza's voice was soft. "After 15 years hoping for a child with Thad, After the surrogate deception, after everything, there will be this boy in the world, half Thad, connected to both of us through him. She turned to Valerie. I've been thinking about what happens after he's born, about your support system. I'll manage, Valerie said, unconsciously protective. I've always managed. I'm sure you will, Eliza agreed, but you shouldn't have to do it alone. Not when, she hesitated, not when I'm here already invested, already caring about his well-being. The implication hung between them, an offer of continued connection, of shared responsibility beyond the business context. Neither woman fully articulated what this might mean, but the possibility took root that evening, growing quietly in the weeks that followed. Meanwhile, Thad Hemingway's spiral continued. The SEC had frozen his remaining accounts, pending resolution of their investigation. With his resources dwindling and legal bills mounting, he'd been forced to sell his luxury car and designer watches. His remaining friends had distanced themselves as evidence of his financial misdeeds became public. But the final humiliation came when the Bellwood Gazette published a feature on Phoenix Construction's successful restructuring, complete with photographs of Eliza and Valerie at project sites, reviewing plans, meeting with the workers who had once answered to Thad. The article praised their transparent approach and highlighted the company's improved ethical foundation. That evening, Thad drove to his former home, the lakeside mansion now occupied solely by Eliza. Fueled by whiskey and rage, he pounded on the door until James Caldwell answered. "She's not here," James said flatly. "And you're trespassing." "The hell I am," Thad slurred. "This is my house, my company, my life they've stolen." "Go home, Thad," James advised, blocking the doorway. "Before you make things worse for yourself." "Where is she? With Valerie, playing happy family with my baby?" Thad's voice rose hysterically. "Tell Eliza I know what she's doing. Tell her she hasn't won. Tell her—" "I'm calling the police," James interrupted, closing the door firmly. Thad stumbled back to his car, his humiliation transforming into cold resolve. If legal means had failed him, if persuasion and intimidation weren't working, perhaps more drastic measures were required. The next day, as Valerie rested in the guest house, a knock at the door revealed an unexpected visitor, Judge Robert Donovan. "Ms. Reeves," he greeted her formally, "I hope I'm not disturbing your rest." "Not at all," she replied, surprised. "Please, come in." The judge settled carefully into a chair, studying her. "I thought it was time we spoke directly. My wife has been quite taken with the unique situation developing between you and Eliza." Valerie tensed. "And you disapprove?" "On the contrary," he replied, his expression softening. "I find it rather remarkable, transforming a potential tragedy into something constructive." He leaned forward. "But I came to warn you. Thad appeared at Eliza's house last night, intoxicated and making threats. He was turned away, but his behavior concerns me." "Threats about what?" "About you, the baby, the company." His words were jumbled, but the intent was clear. He feels he's been robbed of everything that matters. The judge hesitated. "I've known Thad since he was building his first development. He's always been driven, sometimes ruthless in business. But this is different. There's a desperation in him now." After the judge left, Valerie called Eliza, who rushed to the guest house immediately. They were discussing security measures when Valerie suddenly gasped, clutching her abdomen. "What is it?" Eliza asked, alarmed. "Just Braxton Hicks contractions," Valerie assured her. "The doctor mentioned they might start around now." But 20 minutes later, another contraction hit, stronger than before. And when Valerie stood, her face drained of color as liquid pooled at her feet. "My water broke," she whispered. "But it's too early. I'm barely 7 months." What followed was a blur of activity. James rushing them to Bellwood Memorial Hospital, nurses wheeling Valerie into the maternity ward, doctors conferring about premature labor. Through it all, Eliza stayed at Valerie's side, holding her hand and speaking reassurances neither fully believed. "The stress," Valerie gasped between contractions. "The preeclampsia. They warned me this could happen." Hours passed in a cycle of pain, fear, and tense monitoring. Outside the delivery room, Caroline arrived with overnight bags for both women, having let herself into their respective homes with spare keys. "Any word on Thad?" she asked James quietly. "Nothing since last night," he replied. "Why?" "He wasn't at his apartment when the sheriff went to warn him about the restraining order Eliza filed this morning. No one's seen him all day." Inside the delivery room, at 3:17 a.m., Nathan James Reeves entered the world, small at just over 5 pounds, but with healthy lungs that announced his arrival with impressive vigor. As the doctors whisked him to a waiting incubator for assessment, Valerie collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted but relieved. "He's beautiful," Eliza said, tears streaming down her face. "Perfect." In that moment, something crystallized between them, a commitment deeper than business alliance or even friendship. The sight of Nathan, tiny but fighting, cemented their unlikely bond into something neither could have anticipated when they'd first faced each other across the ruins of Eliza's vow renewal ceremony. The next morning, as Valerie slept and Nathan rested in the NICU under careful monitoring, Eliza stepped into the hospital hallway to call Caroline with an update. As she ended the call, she noticed a nurse she didn't recognize entering Valerie's room carrying a small bouquet. Something about the nurse's gait, the familiar stride, the set of the shoulders, triggered Eliza's instincts. She rushed back toward the room, arriving just as the nurse approached Valerie's bed. "Thad!" Eliza's voice cracked like a whip. He turned, and Eliza's blood froze at his expression. Hollow-eyed, unshaven, with a manic intensity she'd never seen before. The hospital scrubs he wore had clearly been stolen, and the flowers concealed something clutched in his right hand. "Get out," she ordered, positioning herself between him and the now awakening Valerie. "I came to see my son," Thad replied, his voice eerily calm. "My actual son, not some surrogate fantasy." "Security is already on their way," Eliza bluffed, reaching for the call button behind her. "I saw him in the nursery," Thad continued as if she hadn't spoken. "He has my father's chin. My coloring." His gaze shifted to Valerie. "Did you know I almost killed you that night at the cabin? Had the gun right in my pocket. Could have ended it all, buried you in the woods, vanished with the offshore money." Valerie's monitors began beeping as her heart rate accelerated. "But I couldn't do it," Thad continued, a twisted smile forming. "Weak, I guess. Too weak to pull the trigger. Too weak to stop you both from destroying everything I built." "We didn't destroy anything," Eliza replied, keeping her voice level. "You did that yourself, Thad. Every lie, every betrayal, every dollar you stole, those were your choices." His face contorted. "Don't lecture me. Not while you're playing house with my mistress, planning to raise my son without me." "Nathan will know who his father is," Valerie spoke up, her voice shaky but determined. "But knowing who you are and having you in his life are different things." Thad's hand tightened around whatever he held beneath the flowers. "I still have one card to play. One way to make sure no one forgets who built Hemingway Construction." 2 security guards appeared in the doorway, followed by James Caldwell, whose eyes widened at the scene before him. "Thad," he said cautiously, "don't make this worse." "Worse?" Thad laughed bitterly. "What could be worse than watching these 2 take everything? My company, my reputation, my son?" His hand emerged from beneath the flowers, revealing not a weapon, but a thick manila envelope. Inside is everything. The real financial records. Proof that Eliza knew about offshore investments years ago. Evidence that Valerie deliberately targeted me as part of a financial scheme. "That's absurd," Eliza gasped. "Pure fiction." "The beauty of documents is that they can be created, just like I created the surrogate story," Thad replied, his smile chilling. "I've sent copies to the SEC, the board, and the Bellwood Gazette. By tomorrow, everyone will question this touching partnership you've created." The security guards moved forward, but Thad raised his hands in mock surrender. "I'm leaving. I've done what I came to do." As they escorted him from the room, Thad called back over his shoulder, "You can change the name, but you can't erase me. Phoenix Construction will always be Hemingway at its core." In the stunned silence that followed, Eliza sank into the chair beside Valerie's bed. "He's bluffing, he has to be." "Whether he is or not," Valerie replied, reaching for Eliza's hand, "we face it together, for Nathan's sake." The next 48 hours unfolded in a series of challenges and unexpected resolutions. Thad's fabricated evidence quickly fell apart under scrutiny, the documents obviously created recently, the signatures easily proven forged, the timeline contradicting established facts. But his desperate action accelerated legal consequences. The prosecutor, alarmed by Thad's hospital intrusion and apparent instability, fast-tracked the fraud charges. When Thad failed to appear for his arraignment, a warrant was issued for his arrest. Officers found him at the Lakeview Hotel, unconscious from an apparent suicide attempt, empty pill bottles and a half-finished note beside him. He was rushed to the same hospital where Valerie and Nathan remained, now under police guard as he recovered. 3 days after Nathan's birth, as Valerie prepared for discharge, Eliza entered the hospital room with an unexpected proposal. "The house is too big for just me," she began hesitantly. "And the guest house at James's ranch is too isolated for a new mother, especially with a premature baby requiring extra care." Valerie looked up from packing her bag. "What are you suggesting?" "Move into the lakeside house. There's a guest suite with its own entrance, plenty of space, and I'll be there to help with Nathan when you need rest." Eliza rushed on before Valerie could respond. "It's just practical, really. We're already working together, making decisions about Nathan together. And after Thad's intrusion, you're afraid he'll try again," Valerie finished. "Yes," Eliza admitted, "but it's more than that. When I saw Nathan in the NICU, something changed for me. I can't explain it exactly, but I feel connected to him. Not as his mother, you're his mother, but as something else, something without a clear name yet." The moment hung between them, weighted with implications neither fully understood, but both instinctively recognized. This wasn't just about practicality or security or even the baby. It was about the unexpected bond that had formed through shared trauma and recovery, a bond that defied conventional categorization. "People will talk," Valerie said finally. "People already talk," Eliza countered with a small smile. "At least this way we define the story on our terms." As a nurse entered with discharge paperwork and final instructions for Nathan's care, the two women exchanged a look of mutual understanding. Whatever came next, Thad's prosecution, the company's continued transformation, the raising of Nathan, they would face it together, creating a family structure unique to their circumstances, but no less valid for its unconventionality. The real phoenix rising from the ashes wasn't just a construction company. It was the unexpected family forming from the ruins of Thad Hemingway's deception, stronger, more authentic, and built on a foundation far more solid than the lies that had connected them in the first place. 3 months after Nathan's premature birth, the Bellwood Town Council chamber was filled to capacity for Phoenix Construction's first public project presentation. Eliza stood confidently at the podium, presenting renderings of a proposed community center that would replace the aging facility where she and Valerie had held their press conference. "Phoenix Construction is committed to buildings that serve community needs," she explained, advancing through slides. "The proposed center includes expanded meeting spaces, a modern library wing, and affordable childcare facilities for working families." From her seat in the front row, Valerie watched with quiet pride, Nathan sleeping against her chest in a baby carrier. At 10 weeks old, he was growing steadily, though still smaller than average for his age. His delicate features had begun to take shape. Thad's stubborn chin, Valerie's wide-set eyes, a unique blend that made him entirely his own person. Martin Reynolds leaned over to whisper to Valerie, "Remarkable transformation, isn't it? The company and the woman running it." Indeed, Eliza had evolved dramatically in the months since the disastrous vow renewal ceremony. The reserved English teacher had discovered unexpected aptitudes for leadership, strategic thinking, and public speaking. Her natural intelligence, previously channeled into literature and teaching, now found expression in business development and community engagement. After the presentation, as council members asked questions about financing and construction timelines, Caroline slipped into the seat beside Valerie. "The board vote was unanimous," she murmured. "Eliza's position as CEO is now permanent, not interim. She'll be pleased," Valerie replied softly, careful not to disturb Nathan. "She deserves it." "As do you," Caroline added. "The CFO position is yours permanently as well if you want it." Valerie's hand rested protectively on Nathan's back. "I do, with the flexible arrangement we discussed." The arrangement in question had been Eliza's creation, a work structure that allowed Valerie to perform many CFO duties remotely, with 3 days in the office and 2 at home each week. It was just one of many accommodations that had evolved organically as the two women navigated their unconventional household. Living together had proven surprisingly seamless. The lakeside mansion's generous proportions allowed for both privacy and shared spaces. Gradually, the guest suite Valerie had initially occupied expanded to include a nursery for Nathan and a home office for remote work. Meals were often shared, childcare responsibilities divided based on work schedules rather than rigid roles. For Bellwood, this living arrangement had initially sparked predictable curiosity and gossip. But as weeks passed into months, the sight of Eliza and Valerie with baby Nathan became increasingly commonplace. At the grocery store, at community events, at Phoenix construction gatherings. "It's peculiar," Martha Donovan had commented to her husband over dinner one evening, "how something that seemed so scandalous has become almost normal." Judge Donovan, fully recovered from his mild heart attack, had considered this thoughtfully, perhaps because they themselves treat it as normal. No apologies, no explanations, just two women raising a child and running a business. Indeed, Eliza and Valerie had adopted a policy of dignified transparency. They neither hid their situation nor explained it defensively. When questions arose about their relationship, whether from curious townspeople or business associates, they answered matter-of-factly. They were co-parents to Nathan and business partners at Phoenix Construction. The precise nature of their personal bond remained private, defined by them alone. After the town council meeting, which approved the community center project with enthusiastic support, Eliza joined Valerie and Caroline outside. "Congratulations," Caroline said, handing Eliza a folder. "The permanent appointment paperwork for both of you." Eliza's eyes widened. "Already? I thought the board was waiting until the 6-month mark." "They've seen enough," Caroline replied with a rare smile. "Phoenix Construction's financials are stronger than Hemingway's ever were. Employee retention is up. Community goodwill is at an all-time high." As they walked toward their cars, a local reporter approached. "Mrs. Hemingway, I mean Ms. Caldwell," he corrected, acknowledging Eliza's recent return to her maiden name. "Any comment on today's Thaddeus Hemingway court decision?" Eliza and Valerie exchanged glances. Neither had been following the day's legal proceedings, deliberately focusing on the council presentation instead. "I'm not aware of any decision today," Eliza replied carefully. "The judge denied his attorney's motion to reduce charges," the reporter explained, watching their reactions. "The fraud and embezzlement case is proceeding to trial next month." For a moment, Eliza's composure wavered. Despite everything, hearing about Thad's legal troubles still affected her. "The judicial system will determine appropriate consequences," she said finally. "Phoenix Construction is focused on the future, not the past." Later that evening, after Nathan had been fed and settled in his crib, Eliza and Valerie sat on the lakeside deck, sharing a bottle of wine as sunset painted the water gold and crimson. "7 months ago," Eliza mused, "I thought my life was following a predictable path. Teaching literature, supporting Thad's career, finally becoming a mother through what I believed was a surrogate." Valerie studied her wine glass. "And I thought I was escaping one bad situation, only to find myself trapped in another. Now look at us." Eliza gestured toward the house behind them, where Nathan slept peacefully. "Co-CEOs, co-parents, building something neither of us could have imagined. Does it ever feel surreal to you?" Valerie asked softly. "This arrangement we've created. Sometimes," Eliza admitted. "But then I remember the alternatives. You raising Nathan alone while I licked my wounds in isolation, the company failing, Thad somehow escaping consequences." She shook her head. "This unlikely path has proven better than any conventional option available to us." Valerie nodded, then hesitated before asking the question that had lingered unspoken between them. "Do you ever regret not having a child of your own, after wanting one for so long?" The question hung in the twilight air, weighted with emotion. "Nathan feels like mine in some ways," Eliza answered thoughtfully. "Not as his mother, you're his mother always, but as someone who loves him, who's committed to his well-being, who's helping shape his life." She met Valerie's gaze directly. "Is that enough? I don't know yet, but it feels meaningful in a way I never anticipated." Their conversation was interrupted by Eliza's phone, her brother James calling with news that would significantly impact their already unconventional situation. Across town in the Bellwood Detention Center's medical unit, Thad Hemingway sat across from Gregory Walsh, processing the day's legal setbacks. "Without reduced charges, we're looking at a minimum of 5 years if convicted," Walsh explained. "Given the evidence, conviction is likely on at least the financial counts." Thad stared at his shackled hands. The failed suicide attempt had left him under constant monitoring, his freedom restricted even beyond normal pre-trial detention. The past 3 months had stripped away every vestige of the confident, successful man he'd once been. His designer clothes replaced by detention center garb, his executive haircut grown out and unkempt, his confident posture collapsed into defensive hunching. "What about a plea deal?" he asked, his voice hoarse from disuse. "The prosecutor might consider it, but their terms would be severe. Full restitution, significant prison time, permanent restrictions on future business activities." Thad closed his eyes briefly. "Have you seen them? Eliza and Valerie?" Walsh hesitated. "They were at the town council meeting today. Phoenix Construction won the community center contract. And the baby? Growing well, from what I hear." Thad nodded slowly. During his darkest moments in detention, he'd been forced to confront the reality of what he'd lost. Not just material possessions and social standing, but the genuine love Eliza had offered for 15 years, the opportunity to know his son, the trust of a community that had once respected him. "Would they agree to let me see Nathan?" he asked suddenly. "Just once, before the trial." Walsh's expression was dubious. "After the hospital incident. The restraining order is still in effect, Thad. And even if it weren't, why would they agree? Because despite everything, he's my son, my blood." Thad's voice cracked. "The only thing I've created that might outlast all this damage." Walsh promised to inquire, but offered little hope. As he gathered his papers to leave, he hesitated. "There's one more thing you should know. The SEC investigation uncovered additional offshore accounts, ones not tied to Hemingway Construction." Thad tensed. "What accounts?" "Registered to shell companies in Panama and the Bahamas. Significant funds, approximately $20 million, transferred from your personal accounts over the past 7 years." "That's impossible," Thad protested. "I never had that kind of money personally." Walsh studied him closely. "The transfers originated from accounts in your name. The authorization signatures match yours perfectly." "I'm telling you, those aren't mine." Thad's voice rose in frustration. "I had the Cayman account, yes, and the Swiss numbered account, but nothing in Panama or the Bahamas." "Well, someone had access to your information and signatures. The SEC is expanding their investigation to determine if identity theft was involved." After Walsh departed, Thad paced his medical unit cell, mind racing. $20 million in accounts he knew nothing about, using his identity. It made no sense. He'd been careful with his financial deceptions, methodical, measured, covering his tracks. These new discoveries suggested either extreme carelessness or a chilling thought struck him. What if he wasn't the only one who had been living a double life? 2 weeks later, on a crisp autumn morning, Eliza and Valerie stood before a gathered crowd at the Bellwood Community Center for another announcement, this one more personal than business-related. "Thank you all for coming," Eliza began, her gaze sweeping over familiar faces. Phoenix Construction employees, town officials, friends who had supported them through tumultuous months. "Today, we're announcing the establishment of the Phoenix Foundation for Women's Empowerment." Beside her, Valerie continued, "The foundation will provide financial support, legal assistance and housing options for women leaving abusive or manipulative relationships." As someone who came to Bellwood escaping precisely such a situation, this mission holds personal significance for me. What neither woman mentioned was that the foundation's initial funding came from James Caldwell's unexpected discovery. Eliza's maternal grandfather had established a trust that had quietly appreciated for decades, intended for her but never previously revealed. The substantial sum had provided both personal financial security and seed money for the foundation. After the announcement, as attendees mingled during a reception, Judge Donovan approached Eliza. "A worthy endeavor," he said, gesturing toward the foundation materials. "Though I admit I'm curious about the timing." "What do you mean?" Eliza asked. The judge lowered his voice. "I presided over a hearing this morning regarding the SEC's discovery of those additional offshore accounts in Thad's name. Accounts he claims to know nothing about." Eliza's expression remained neutral. "Financial investigations can be complicated." "Indeed," the judge agreed, "particularly when identity theft might be involved. The interesting timing I mentioned is that these mysterious accounts began receiving funds exactly 7 years ago." He studied her carefully. "Around the time you inherited your grandmother's portfolio, if I recall correctly." Before Eliza could respond, Valerie joined them, Nathan curled against her shoulder. "Judge Donovan," she greeted him. "I hope you're feeling well, no more cardiac concerns." "Fit as a fiddle, thank you," he replied, attention shifting to the baby. "Young Nathan is thriving, I see." As they chatted about Nathan's development, the moment for pursuing deeper questions about the mysterious accounts passed, but the judge's penetrating gaze suggested his curiosity remained unsatisfied. Later that evening, as Nathan slept and a fire crackled in the lakeside home's great room fireplace, Eliza and Valerie sat in companionable silence, reviewing foundation documents. The peaceful scene was interrupted by a call from Gregory Walsh. "Miss Caldwell," he began formally when Eliza answered, "I'm calling regarding a matter of some delicacy. My client, Thaddeus Hemingway, has requested a supervised visit with his son prior to trial." Eliza put the call on speaker so Valerie could hear. "And why would we consider that request? He's facing significant prison time, Ms. Caldwell. This may be his only opportunity to see his child for years." Valerie and Eliza exchanged a long look, a wordless communication developed over months of shared decision-making. "We'll consider it," Eliza replied finally, "under very specific conditions and with appropriate security." After ending the call, Valerie sighed heavily. "Are we doing the right thing? After his behavior at the hospital?" "I don't know," Eliza admitted, "but Nathan may someday ask about his father. We should be able to tell him we allowed at least one meeting, if only so he knows we didn't prevent it out of spite." Their conversation shifted to practical arrangements for the requested visit, but underlying currents remained, questions about the future, about how they would explain Thad to Nathan as he grew, about the nature of forgiveness and consequences. 1 week later, in a specially arranged room at the detention center, Thad sat waiting, hands unshackled for the first time in weeks. When the door opened and Valerie entered carrying Nathan, his breath caught. "Thank you for coming," he said softly, eyes fixed on the baby. Valerie nodded stiffly, taking a seat across the table. Eliza remained standing near the door, a silent guardian. "He's beautiful," Thad whispered, studying the child's features with hungry intensity. "May I hold him?" Valerie hesitated, then carefully transferred Nathan into Thad's awkward embrace. The baby regarded his biological father with solemn curiosity, tiny fingers reaching toward Thad's face. "Hello, Nathan." Thad's voice broke as he addressed his son directly for the first time. "I'm your father, though I don't deserve the title." The naked vulnerability in his expression was something neither woman had witnessed before. Not during the marriage, not during the affair, not even during the public exposure of his deceptions. In this moment, stripped of pretense and power, Thad Hemingway appeared genuinely human. "He has your chin," Valerie acknowledged quietly. "And your eyes," Thad replied. "A better combination than he deserves from me." For 15 minutes they maintained this fragile truce, Thad holding his son, asking questions about his development, absorbing details of a life he would largely miss. As their allotted time neared its end, his expression grew troubled. "There's something I need to say," he began, looking between the two women. "About those Panama and Bahamas accounts the SEC found." Eliza tensed visibly. "That's not why we're here." "I know, but it matters." Thad's gaze fixed on her. "Those aren't my accounts, Eliza. I never opened them, never transferred money to them. But someone with access to my personal information did." "The SEC will sort it out," Eliza replied dismissively. "I think they already have." Thad's voice was quiet, but pointed. "The first transfers coincided with your inheritance. The signature authorization matches mine perfectly, as perfect as only a spouse with years of practice forging my signature could manage." The accusation hung in the air between them. Valerie looked confused, but a subtle shift in Eliza's composure suggested the arrow had found its mark. "Are you actually accusing me of financial fraud?" Eliza's tone was incredulous. "After everything you did?" "I'm suggesting that perhaps I wasn't the only one living a double life in our marriage," Thad replied evenly. "That while I was creating a fictional surrogate, you were creating a financial safety net I knew nothing about. Using my identity, my signatures, my reputation to shield yourself. That's absurd," Eliza scoffed, but her denial lacked conviction. "Is it?" Thad glanced at Valerie. "Did she tell you about her father's gambling addiction? How it destroyed their family fortune? How she spent her childhood watching her mother struggle after trusting a man with all their financial security?" Valerie looked to Eliza, whose composed facade had begun to crack. "I made Eliza financially dependent," Thad continued. "Convinced her to leave teaching for a part-time position at the foundation, controlled the household accounts, kept her name off most assets. For a woman with her history, That must have been terrifying. You have no right, Eliza whispered, but the denial sounded hollow even to her own ears. I'm not judging you, Thad said, surprising both women. If anything, I admire the foresight, the careful planning, the secret protection you built while smiling at my side at business dinners. He handed Nathan back to Valerie with gentle care. We're not so different, you and I, Eliza. We both created elaborate deceptions to protect what we valued most. Mine was ego and control. Yours was security and independence. As a guard appeared to end the visit, Thad addressed both women. I'll instruct Walsh not to pursue the identity theft angle for those accounts. Consider it my contribution to Nathan's future and to the foundation you've established. This unexpected gesture left both women momentarily speechless. As Thad was led away, he turned back briefly. Take care of him and each other. You've built something remarkable from the ashes of my mistakes. The revelation fundamentally shifted the dynamic between Eliza and Valerie. On the drive home, silence stretched between them until they reached the lakeside house. Is it true? Valerie finally asked as they settled Nathan in his crib. About the accounts? Eliza's shoulders slumped with the release of a secret carried for years. Yes, after we married, I watched how Thad operated, consolidating control, isolating assets in his name only, making me increasingly dependent. It triggered every fear from my childhood. So you created a safety net he didn't know about, using his own tactics against him. Eliza's laugh held no humor. I started small, diverting part of my inheritance into accounts opened using corporate structures similar to ones he'd created. The irony is that I learned how to do it by watching him work. Why not tell me this before? Valerie asked, hurt evident in her voice. Because it made me a hypocrite, Eliza admitted, publicly condemning Thad's financial deceptions while hiding my own. The difference is that I never took company money, only protected what was legitimately mine. They moved to the living room, the weight of this revelation demanding space for processing. I understand why you did it, Valerie said finally. After escaping one controlling relationship in Chicago, I recognized the instinct for self-protection. Does it change how you see me? Eliza asked, vulnerability evident in her question. Valerie considered this carefully. It makes you more human, more complex. She looked toward the nursery where Nathan slept. More like the rest of us, doing our best to survive, sometimes making questionable choices for understandable reasons. In the weeks that followed, this shared understanding deepened their bond in unexpected ways. The acknowledgement of imperfection, that neither was entirely victim nor entirely innocent, created a more honest foundation for their partnership, both personal and professional. Thad's trial proceeded with surprising efficiency. His guilty plea to reduce charges of financial misconduct and fraud resulted in a 3-year sentence, with possibility of parole after 18 months. As promised, no mention was made of the Panama or Bahamas accounts, which mysteriously disappeared from the SEC investigation's public findings. 6 months after Nathan's birth, Phoenix Construction had fully emerged from Hemingway's shadow. The company's ethical reputation attracted new investors, while Eliza and Valerie's unusual personal story became an asset rather than a liability, a living example of resilience and reinvention that resonated with clients and community alike. The Phoenix Foundation's first initiative, a transitional housing complex for women leaving difficult situations, broke ground on land donated by James Caldwell adjacent to his ranch. At the ceremony, Eliza and Valerie stood together with Nathan, now a healthy, thriving 6-month-old whose smile had become a fixture at company events. From great pain can come great purpose, Eliza told the gathered crowd. What began as personal tragedy has transformed into community opportunity. Later, as they walked the property where housing units would soon stand, Valerie asked the question that had lingered since Thad's revelation. Do you regret it? The financial deception during your marriage? Eliza considered this thoughtfully. I regret the necessity of it. In a healthy relationship, such measures wouldn't have been needed. She gestured toward the foundation site. But without those protected funds, this wouldn't be possible. Nathan's future wouldn't be secure. Sometimes the path to something good requires complicated choices along the way. A phoenix rising from complicated ashes, Valerie mused, adjusting Nathan in her arms. Exactly. Eliza smiled at the baby, who reached for her with complete trust. The most meaningful victories often come at significant cost. But that doesn't make them any less valuable. As they walked back toward their shared home, the setting sun cast long shadows across the landscape, not unlike the shadows of their past that would always be present, acknowledged, but no longer defining. What mattered now was the future they were building, for themselves, for Nathan, and for the community that had become both witness to and beneficiary of their unlikely alliance. Their victory had indeed been bitter in its origins, costly in its execution, but as they crossed the threshold into the home they now genuinely shared, both women recognized that what they'd gained, trust, purpose, family defined by choice rather than convention, represented a triumph neither could have imagined in the aftermath of that fateful vow renewal ceremony that had changed everything. 3 years later, the lakeside property had transformed. What was once Thad and Eliza's showcase mansion now featured a renovated guest house, an expanded deck overlooking the water, and a colorful playground where a formal garden once stood. On this particular summer evening, the space buzzed with activity as guests arrived for Nathan's 3rd birthday celebration. "Mama, Liza, look what I found!" Nathan's clear voice rang out as he raced across the lawn, dark curls bouncing, a perfectly formed pine cone clutched in his small hand. At 3, he was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity, with Valerie's expressive eyes and the determined chin that marked him unmistakably as Thad's son. Valerie knelt to examine his treasure. "That's a beautiful pine cone, sweetheart. Should we add it to your nature collection?" "Yes, next to the special rocks." He turned to Eliza. "Liza, will you help me put it there?" "After the guests arrive," Eliza promised, smoothing his wild hair affectionately. In the 3 years since his birth, they had settled into natural roles, Valerie as Mama and Eliza as simply Liza, a designation that had evolved organically from Nathan's first attempts at speech. From the driveway came the sound of Caroline's car, followed by Judge and Martha Donovan's SUV. Soon the backyard filled with an eclectic mix of guests that reflected the unconventional family's wide circle. Phoenix construction executives, foundation staff, neighbors who had moved from suspicious observation to genuine support, and even some of Eliza's former teaching colleagues. "The place looks wonderful," Martha Donovan commented, accepting a glass of lemonade from Valerie. "Those roses by the guest house are spectacular." "Eliza's doing," Valerie replied with a smile. "Turns out her talents extend beyond literature and construction management." "And how is the foundation's expansion coming along?" Judge Donovan asked, watching Nathan organize younger children into what appeared to be an elaborate pine cone hunt. "On schedule and under budget," Eliza answered, joining them. "The new counseling center opens next month. We've already hired 3 therapists specializing in recovery from financial abuse, an area we've found is critically underserved." The Phoenix Foundation had indeed flourished beyond initial expectations. What began as a single transitional housing project had expanded into a comprehensive support network with facilities in 3 counties. Its success had drawn national attention, bringing researchers and social service professionals to Bellwood to study what locals now simply called the Phoenix model. Similarly, Phoenix Construction had established itself as a regional leader in ethical development. Under Eliza and Valerie's joint leadership, the company had nearly doubled in size, while maintaining its commitment to community-focused projects and transparent operations. Their unusual partnership, once the subject of scandal and speculation, was now featured in business publications as an innovative management approach. "Nathan has quite the leadership style," Martha observed, watching the children follow his enthusiastic directions in their nature hunt. "A natural little CEO in training." "He comes by it honestly," Caroline remarked, appearing with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. Now Phoenix Construction's chief operations officer, she had blossomed in the reorganized company. Her loyalty to Eliza and Valerie rewarded with increasing responsibility and recognition. As the party continued, James Caldwell arrived with a gift nearly as tall as Nathan himself. The boy's excited shriek upon unwrapping the child-sized workbench, complete with plastic tools, brought smiles to every adult face. "Now I can build things like you and Mama," he declared to Eliza, immediately setting to work on an imaginary construction project. Later, as the celebration wound down and guests departed with cake-smudged plates and party favors, Valerie found Eliza standing alone at the edge of the lake, watching the sunset paint the water in fiery hues. "Penny for your thoughts?" Valerie asked, joining her. Just reflecting, Eliza replied. 3 years ago today we were in that hospital room, you recovering from premature labor, me trying to process everything that had happened, both of us terrified and uncertain. And now look at us. Valerie gestured toward the house where Nathan was showing his grandfather, James, his new treasures. Co-parents, business partners, foundation directors, friends, Eliza added softly. Their relationship had evolved into something that defied conventional labels, deeper than friendship, different from romance, bound by shared purpose and mutual respect. Have you told Nathan about the visit? Valerie asked, referring to the letter that had arrived the previous week. Eliza shook her head. I thought we should discuss it first. Thad's been out for 6 months now. This is the first time he's reached out. Thad's 3-year sentence had been reduced to 18 months with good behavior. Upon release, he had moved to Colorado, maintaining a respectful distance while occasionally sending cards and small gifts for Nathan's birthdays and Christmas. The letter requesting a visit represented a significant shift in this arm's-length approach. What do you think? Valerie asked, watching Nathan across the lawn. Is he ready to meet his father? Are we? Eliza considered this carefully. Nathan asks questions sometimes about why other kids have daddies and he doesn't. I think he deserves to know Thad, at least in some capacity. And Thad deserves a chance to know him, Valerie acknowledged, despite everything. Their conversation was interrupted by Nathan himself, running toward them with James following at a more sedate pace. Mama Liza, Grandpa James says there are fish we could see if we had a special light. Can we get one, please? As Valerie explained that underwater lights would need to wait for another day, James drew Eliza aside. Letter came for you, he said quietly, handing her an envelope. Official looking. Eliza recognized the letterhead immediately, her attorney's firm. Inside was confirmation that her divorce from Thad had been officially finalized years earlier, but with an additional note. Thad had legally relinquished all claims to the company formerly known as Hemingway Construction, signing over his remaining shares to Phoenix's employee ownership program. It was the final severing of ties to their shared past, a gesture of surprising generosity from a man who had once fought desperately to maintain control. Later that night, after Nathan had finally succumbed to birthday exhaustion and the house had quieted, Eliza shared the news with Valerie as they sat on the deck overlooking the moonlit lake. It's really over, Valerie murmured. The last official connection. Except for Nathan, Eliza reminded her. Except for Nathan, Valerie agreed. And that's as it should be. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the gentle lapping of water against the shoreline. Their shared life had found a rhythm neither could have anticipated. Separate bedrooms but shared meals, distinct roles but united purpose, individual strengths combined to create something stronger than either could achieve alone. I received another letter today, Eliza said finally, from a publishing house. They want me to write a book about our journey, the foundation, the business, the family we've created. Will you do it? Eliza smiled. Only if you co-author. This story belongs to both of us. The following morning, a sleepy-eyed Nathan padded into the kitchen where Valerie prepared breakfast and Eliza reviewed foundation documents. He climbed onto a chair between them, a now familiar arrangement that symbolized his position bridging their two worlds. Mama Liza, he began in the solemn tone that indicated a serious question was coming. Jenny at daycare says families need a mommy and daddy, but I have a mama and a Liza. Is that okay? The two women exchanged glances over his head, having anticipated this question would eventually arrive. Families come in many different shapes, Valerie explained gently. Some have a mommy and daddy. Some have two mommies or two daddies. Some have just one parent. And some, like ours, have their own special arrangement. You have a daddy too, Eliza added carefully. He lives far away, but he loves you, and someday soon you might meet him. Nathan considered this with the intense concentration only a 3-year-old can muster. But I like our family. You and Mama make me happy. And you make us happy, Eliza assured him, ruffling his hair. As Nathan ate his breakfast, chattering about the day's anticipated adventures, Valerie caught Eliza's eye with a silent message of shared understanding. Their path to this moment had been complicated, painful, costly, but the result was undeniably worth every difficult step. On the refrigerator door, held by magnets Nathan had painted himself, hung a child's drawing of three figures holding hands beneath a blazing sun, a small boy between two women, all with enormous smiles. Below, in Nathan's wobbly handwriting guided by his daycare teacher's hand, were the words, "My family." It wasn't the family any of them had envisioned years earlier. It certainly wasn't what Bellwood had expected to emerge from the scandalous vow renewal ceremony that had shocked the community, but it was real, resilient, and remarkably functional. Proof that sometimes the most lasting bonds form from the most broken beginnings. Outside the kitchen window, the morning sun illuminated the Phoenix construction sign at the edge of their property, the stylized bird rising from flames, now a familiar sight throughout the region. The image had become more than a corporate logo. It represented a philosophy that had transformed not just a company but the lives of everyone connected to it. From destruction can come renewal, from endings new beginnings, from the most painful burns the most powerful rebirth. And in the quiet kitchen of the lakeside home, that philosophy took its most meaningful form, not in buildings or programs or foundations, but in the simple, profound reality of a family that had found its own unique way to rise from the ashes of betrayal and create something beautiful in its place. If this story touched your heart and you want to keep following inspiring and moving stories, be sure to check out our upcoming videos. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated on new content that can brighten your journey and provide valuable insights. Join us and keep exploring stories that truly matter. I'm sure the next video that pops up on your screen will touch you as well, so click on it now and we'll see you there.